Course in Miracles, week 21. Today we're doing part one of From Perception to Knowledge. As you're doing it either live or in recording, you know that some of the chapters in Course in Miracles that we, of course, are interpreting in our own way, we're splitting in two because they're so massive. And then some of them we're doing as a full chapter. For example, last week we tackled guilt. And I know a lot of you have gotten back with me saying that that probably was one of the most profound weeks for you of being able to stop the cycle of feeling guilty, understanding that that is one of the most poisonous ways to try to function, and that it has nothing to do with allowing for the divine love to create through you. Let's look at what we're covering today. We're going to talk about the role of healing, the shadow of guilt, as we have covered that whole topic. Now we will be just releasing little shadows that'll pop up for us. Release and restoration, continuing on that topic of restoring your full capacity of functioning as a divine being, and the guarantee of heaven. No, I cannot guarantee heaven. I do not have such power, but we're going to learn that God does, and that that guarantee is open to anyone who wants to claim it. And so that is a very hopeful and powerful statement. So let's look at the perception versus knowledge. And why do we even want to transition from perception to knowledge? What that is and how can we apply it here, now, and then expand it going forward? The Course says that there is nothing partial about knowledge. So, a very interesting perspective. So, if you actually do have knowledge, then it is not partial. We're talking about true knowing and true knowledge. And what's more important, as per Course, is that you are an aspect of knowledge. Being in the mind of God who knows you, all knowledge must be yours, for in you is all knowledge. Perception at its loftiest is never complete. So, really fascinating aspect. You are an aspect of God's knowledge. Isn't that a beautiful concept to think about? The all-knowing creator has created you. And because you're created from perfect knowledge, as long as you're aligned, connected, and aware of that perfect source of knowledge, you have full aspect to it. As we shift off that connection, remember, you guys, we've talked about this whole concept, thy will be done, your will versus God's will, and how anytime we're afraid of God's will, it's because we don't understand it. Because the full alignment with the will of love for you connects you to the source of perfect knowledge. And then you no longer need to uh, relearn things, you get to remember them. And so any discovery becomes remembering, becoming the member of the perfect knowledge that you once had access to and has come to experience on the physical level. So let's look at different aspect of perception and how perception then can take us away from that true knowledge and how the two are related. You know, you have whatever country you're in, and just by counting here, I mean, you guys, I've got 7 countries that are doing this live, which is amazing. We could just kind of look at every single aspect of a political party, and then you would say, okay, you know, why do you even have political parties that disagree constantly? You know, what's the point of those? And ironically, the point of those is very poignant. They are giving different points of perspective. And what happens is that they give different points of perspective so that you can start perceiving the whole topic. The problem, of course, becomes when you become so aligned with a certain way to perceive anything and everything that you're no longer available to any other points of perception but through judgment and negation. And so that's when your point of perception becomes more important to you than God's knowledge of a situation. And so, what is knowledge? Knowledge from a perspective of God is ability to have seen the fullness of vision from every single aspect and perception. So, starting to make sense, right? So, in our journey of the Course in Miracles, we're opening our ability to live a life of miracles by releasing our need to be attached to the perception of the world through our individual aspect of perception only. We're not to lose our aspect. This is why we were created, so we can enjoy the point of view from where you and I are, from that individual, beautifully expressed point of view. But as we align ourselves from ability to tap into fullness of knowledge, we can then start appreciating without judgment, hatred, or anger points of view of everybody else around us in such a way that we are starting to bring to completeness, to circumscribe all things into one complete whole. So that's the journey of knowledge. We've talked about that perception, we've talked about that knowledge. Now, what Jane taps into, she talks about intelligence, and she wants to discern between intelligence and knowledge. There are different levels and concepts of the frequency of the term intelligence, okay? On an everyday usage of the word, we talk about somebody who is intelligent as somebody who has ability to acquire knowledge. Knowledge being the deeper understanding of a subject. So an intelligent person is somebody who is acquiring knowledge to a greater depth. For our perspective, we understand that there is no such a thing as a partial knowledge, that partial knowledge is a perception. Once again, any and all words do not have a permanent meaning other than as they're defined. So we're defining these words for the use of our perception of our course, correct? If you were to go to the university and you were to study what knowledge and what perception is, you would be using different terminology. So even in that, the only absolute that exists is, we go back to the very beginning of the course, is God's love, because God's love is God's love and can only be perceived as such in its fullness. Everything which makes it the only perfect knowledge, everything else is then given to the interpretation. And so from that love, I'm going to go back to James, from that love, from God's love, there is the energy that emanates, and the beginning of that energy that emanates is the light of intelligence. Okay, you and I are the light of intelligence as it emanates from the presence of Creator's light. Why are we intelligence? Because that particular intelligence is a connection to the perfect knowledge of God and through God. So we are first the energy of intelligence. As that intelligence then is born into a spirit form, to the spirit parents, to the creators of the spirit, it becomes a spirit. And then as that spirit is born to the physical parents, to your physical biological parents, it becomes a body. So that causal body, the spirit, becomes a soul by being one with the body. Once again, just one way to perceive the progression of intelligence. So the beginning of who we are as a spark of light on a metaphysical level, not on a scientific level. We are that intelligence as a spark of God's eternal, profound knowledge. What is intelligence? It's truth and light. What is truth? The presence of love. So there we go. Um, in a nutshell, that is what we are doing here today. So the very first thing I would like for you to do before I do that discernment is to align your perception of the world, and more importantly of yourself, with the perception that God has of you. And as we align more and more that you perceive yourself through the knowledge that God has for you, the more centered your perception becomes the eternal knowledge of the light intelligence that you are. And the more aligned you become with that, the more capable you are to then see and perceive the world through the frequency of love. And that, of course, gives you a better, higher perspective and a fuller perception towards gaining the knowledge of all. So, with your permission, I'm going to first send you unconditional love and then ask for that alignment. So, if you would just close your eyes for 1 second. And we're going to send unconditional love healing to and through every cell of your body, bringing to your remembrance the true concept, the highest perception of intelligence is divine light, the spark of light that you are. If you would like that, please say yes. You now creators understanding and perspective on discernment between knowledge and intelligence in a metaphysical highest sense, seeing intelligence as your connection to and through God's knowledge, and dissociating any fear of judgment, of not being intelligent that has been placed on you by a misunderstanding of the world of what that is. Removing any fear of lack of education, opening the joy of educating yourself for the fun of it, just removing shock and trauma from generations of your ancestors that have lacked formal education and thus were fearing that they were unintelligent, purifying your energy from that shock and trauma, and bringing the joy of intelligence of who you are. If you would like all of those, please say yes. Okay, beautiful. That was a really cool activations.